Welcome everybody to Forza Motorsport 7, and today we're taking a look at the 1967 Dodge Coronet WO23. Now this was part of the 5th generation, produced between 1965 to 1970, though the Coronet name dates all the way back to 1949. And only 55 were built for showroom stock B-class racing, all of which were painted white. And to help keep the weight down, because this being a 60s muscle car, weight it was an issue for many cars back in the day. It came without sound insulation, only came with without hubcaps, without a radio, without heater, weather stripping, spare wheel, jack and mats. The battery was also moved to the rear for slightly better weight distribution, and the large hood scoop was added to improve cooling and performance. So all of that means that this only weighs 3,395 pounds, which is fairly lightweight for a mid-sized muscle car like this, as this was based on the B platform, which other Chrysler models were also based on. And you can certainly tell from the interior that there's very little in here in terms of amenities. As you can see, no radio, no heater or anything in the centre. It's got a 3-speed automatic gearbox, that's why there's no gear lever in the middle there. So you've got a bench seat in the front. Weirdly, there is a bench seat in the back, which I would have thought would have been completely eliminated if it was after more weight. And but it's still also got a sizable boot, despite the battery being in there. It's still fairly practical for a car that is meant for racing, though obviously this is a road-going version of that racing car. And with all that with that lack of weight, it means it can make the most of its sizable horsepower, as it has a 7-litre Hemi V8 producing 425 horsepower and 490 pounds-feet of torque. Now I know it says on the side here the Coronet 440, which would indicate that it was a 7.2-litre Magnum V8, but apparently this is the only one that had a Hemi swapped into it. As you can see, it's got the 426 Hemi badge on the side as well. So a little bit confusing there in terms of what it actually is and the like, but it certainly is a Hemi, as it says under the bonnet. And as a result, it's got all of that power and not much in the way of weight, unlike its other Chrysler cars like the Dodge Challenger or the Dodge Charger, which had the same kind of power as this but weighed a lot more as well. So really doesn't have that much in the way of weight on its side. I would say that I don't really like the look of it. It's a little bit too much of a box. There's really nothing really in terms of looks to like about this car, but in terms of performance, this car really does shine. So let's get out onto the track and see how good it actually is. Alright, so we're at the Road Atlanta Club circuit for 2 laps. Chose the shorter circuit for a very valid reason, which you'll see soon. But this car has pretty damn good performance on the go. And there's only one other car I can think of that is quicker than this from the same period, and that's the Dodge Dart Hemi Superstock. But that was really only a drag car. It wasn't really meant for the road, even though it had some street legal requirements that were added onto it. But even Dodge themselves put out a disclaimer saying that that car really wasn't meant for street use, whereas this, as you can see, clearly is, because it's got a rear bench seat, it's got a sizable boot, which means you can still use this car, but at the end of the day it is meant for racing. And in several respects it is pretty good at that. It's obviously not got much in the way of weight, and because it has all of that power to go along with that lack of weight, it's really rather quick. 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, 0 to 110.3 seconds, and it going to a top speed of 125 mph. Now that's the one big weakness with this car, which is mainly down to the 3-speed automatic gearbox. Now granted, you could get a 4-speed manual, which is the kind I'd go for, because you can see even on this short track we were topping out 125 there, which again is the main problem with this car. Now granted, it does come with the advantage of having really good acceleration, which is why it's so quick to 60, but I'd rather have a little bit of a compromise in that regard, because there's all well and good having all of that acceleration, but not much point in having more than 400 horsepower if you're not even going to crack 130, quite frankly. Now granted, in terms of racing, if you're on certain tracks, you'd obviously change the gearbox or you change the drive ratios and the like, so it's obviously not set in stone, but in this particular version, the top speed and the lack of any real gears is a big problem, because 3 speeds really isn't enough, to be honest. especially to get the most out of such a large engine with such a large amount of power and torque. But yeah, that's the only real problem, especially since this car doesn't have the best of engineering underneath to keep it on the track, but surprisingly it's fairly decent to drive. It does roll around a fair bit, as you can see, and it does only have drum brakes all around, which obviously aren't the preferred method of stopping a vehicle, especially one of this size, but they do the job alright, and yeah, certainly managed to get this car stopped, surprisingly enough. But yeah, it's still got the same kind of characteristics handling wise as any other muscle car from the period. There's very few muscle cars from the 60s and early 70s that handle all that great anyway, so yeah, it hasn't got that much in the way of competition. But yeah, I do like the fact that this is on the game. It was one of the several muscle cars from Forza Motorsport 4 that I was hoping would come back to a future Forza Motorsport game, so I was really pleased that this came back into the Forza Motorsport series, along with the Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. Were a few other muscle cars that unfortunately didn't make the grade on this game or the latest Forza Horizon game, but nonetheless I am glad that it's on the game, because yeah, it's a really rather interesting car, and yeah, considering how old it is and how heavy it is and the fact that it's not got the greatest engineering underneath, the fact it's got that kind of acceleration to 60 back from 1967 is really rather good. Like I said, only a actual drag car could actually beat it. Everything else was far slower. So yeah, do enjoy it being on the game. I just wish there were more cars like it, quite frankly, because yeah, like I said, on Forza Motorsport 4 we had a hell of a lot of muscle cars, and yeah, the likes of a Shelby GT500 isn't on this game, or the CJ version isn't on this game, or the original Pontiac Firebird, which is easily one of my favourite muscle cars, isn't on this game either. So yeah, hopefully in the next Motorsport game we get a lot of muscle cars, returnees and new additions to the series in the next Motorsport game, which will be out next year, which I am really looking forward to. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.